And welcome back to Do I Need a Lawyer? I'm your host, Gary Martin Hayes. Thanks for being with us here this morning. And look, if you have a question you would like for me to address, just give us a call, 770-934-8000, or you can email me, gary@garymartinhayes.com. It's completely free, confidential, there's no obligation, so call us or email me. Now, today I would like for us to talk about what happens if you've been charged with a DUI here in Georgia. And with me today is Attorney George McCranie from the McCranie Law Firm. George, thank you for being here. George is a 1992 graduate of Valdosta State University, received his law degree in 1995 from Mississippi College School of Law. He's also a former assistant district attorney, and folks, I'm telling you, he is the go-to DUI and criminal defense attorney. He's from Douglas, Georgia. George is also the author of the #1 best-selling book on Amazon.com, The Authority on DUI Defense. George has also been seen on NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox News Network affiliates all around the country. He's a great friend, a great lawyer. George, thank you for being here. Good to see you.
Thank you, Gary.
Now, innocent people are overcharged with DUI every day here in Georgia. And a DUI conviction can have serious consequences. You could lose your license, your insurance rates could be increased, school grants could be in jeopardy. There is a lot at risk if you have been convicted of a DUI. Well, our question today comes from Betty in Macon, and Betty asked us this question. Hi, Gary. My husband was pulled over for speeding, and the officer thought he smelled alcohol. The officer told my husband to step out of the car and take some tests. My husband agreed to take the officer's test, even though he didn't understand what the test would be. My husband thought he passed the test, but after blowing into the handheld machine on the side of the road, he was arrested. Does he need a lawyer?
He certainly needs a lawyer, Gary. He really does. Anytime anyone is arrested for a crime in Georgia, the first thing I advise them to do is to hire an attorney.
Now, Betty said her husband was originally stopped for speeding. Is this common in a DUI scenario? Well,
Gary, as you know, in Georgia, officers are trained that simply speeding does not indicate that a driver is under the influence of alcohol or drugs.
All right. In her question, Betty said her husband was instructed to step out of the vehicle by the police officer. Why did he ask him to do that?
Well, Betty stated in her question that the officer said he smelled alcohol. So now this simple speeding violation has gone into a DUI investigation. And in my experience, if a driver is asked to get out of the vehicle, his chances of being arrested have just skyrocketed.
And George, you talked about the roadside test. Are these mandatory?
No, Gary, they're not. The roadside tests are not mandatory in Georgia, and in my experience, most officers don't explain that the roadside tests are voluntary. You are not required to perform those tests.
All right. Are there approved tests, though, that the officer can administer here in Georgia?
Yes, there are, Gary. There are 3 approved roadside tests. They're also known as standardized field sobriety tests, and they should be administered in this order: the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, the walk and turn, and the one-leg stand.
All right. Give us a little bit more detail, if you would, about these 3 tests.
Well, Gary, the horizontal gaze nystagmus test involves the driver's eyes. The officer is looking for nystagmus, and nystagmus is the involuntary jerking of that person's eyes.
Is that when they're saying, follow my finger or follow my pen or something like that?
That's exactly what it is, and the officer is looking for that person to have an involuntary reaction of jerking of his eyes.
All right. Let's go to the second one, walk and turn. Explain that for us.
The walk and turn, people might normally recognize that as being the walk a line test. That's the heel to toe test. And once a person takes that test, then the officer will move to the final test.
And that's the one-leg stand, and explain that for us.
Exactly. The one-leg stand test is where a person will hold one leg or the other off the ground 6 inches for a specified period of time.
Okay, it's not something we practice or do at home. It's a difficult test.
It's not. These tests, in my opinion, aren't really fair tests because you don't get a chance to practice. The officer will ask you to provide all of this evidence against you, and when you do, any little mistake that you make will be used against you in court.
All right, once these 3 approved tests have been administered, what happens next?
After the 3 tests have been administered, the officer will then administer the handheld breath test. That's also known as the PBT, or preliminary breath test. Again, now, all of these tests, including the handheld breath test, are completely voluntary. If you agree to take these tests, you are providing the officer evidence to use against you in court.
And George, we have just another moment left. I encourage people, if they've been arrested, charged with any kind of criminal offense, they need to contact an attorney.
They certainly do. That should be their first priority.
All right. Folks, This answers the question. Do you need a lawyer? Yes. This is one of those areas where you should not try and handle things on your own because the consequences can be extremely severe. And George, how can they get in touch with you if they have a question?
You can contact us, Gary, at 855-201-4932.
And that's a new toll-free exchange. Or,
It
folks,
is.
you can contact me, and we'll be more than happy to put you in touch with George. The phone number, 770-934-8000. Or you can email me, Gary@GaryMartinHayes.com. Look, it doesn't cost you anything to consult with an attorney. It's free. It's completely confidential. There's no obligation. Don't wait, though. Don't wait until the last minute because you could be jeopardizing your rights. Give us a call, 770-934-8000, and we'll be right back.